The first allegation hit the chamber like a dropped match in dry grass. The horse was left to die on land nobody wanted, because someone needed it to disappear. A murmur rolled through the oversight room, cameras clicking, journalists lifting their heads at once, like a flock sensing a shift in wind. From the back row, Scott Jones sat frozen, stiff posture, jaw locked, hands clasped so tightly around a paper cup that the rim buckled. He had never planned to be here. He'd only tried to save a horse. Yet now the details of his quiet, accidental discovery were being dissected under federal lighting. Across the hearing table, Dr. Ellen Ramos adjusted her glasses, her voice steady but her throat visibly tight. When he brought the stallion in, she said, you could see every rib. His heart rate was collapsing. This wasn't neglect. This was abandonment with intention. A ripple of tension. A congressional aide scribbled faster. The committee chair leaned forward, fingers tented, eyes narrowing toward the far end of the witness panel, where Roger Russell sat with a lawyer who whispered in clipped, irritated breaths. Russell's expression flickered only once, a tightening at the corner of his mouth, quickly replaced by a polished calm. Scott's internal thoughts thrashed beneath his stillness. They're saying the quiet parts out loud. They're dragging this into daylight. Behind him, reporters exchanged looks, silent calculations about what the headline would be. Then the chair said it, slowly, deliberately. Mr. Russell, multiple witnesses allege that Victory's champion, long believed dead, was funneled into an illegal breeding scheme and then abandoned. Do you wish to deny that under oath? The room went silent. Cameras leaned in. Scott felt his pulse climb his throat. Russell's jaw twitched. And then, he opened his mouth. Russell didn't answer, not at first. His eyes drifted toward the ceiling, as if searching for a script his attorney hadn't written. The pause stretched long enough for tension to calcify across the chamber. Even the journalists stopped typing. Finally, he spoke. I'll answer what I'm legally required to answer, he said, every word wrapped in the polished tone of a man used to controlling rooms, just not this one. A low exhale rippled from the gallery. The committee chair didn't flinch. Good. Then let's start with the night Mr. Jones found the stallion. Scott felt 100 eyes slide toward him. His throat tightened, his palms damp. He hadn't expected to testify. He just came to witness, to understand. But now one of the aides was stepping toward him, whispering, if we call you, are you prepared? Prepared? No. But he nodded anyway. Dr. Ramos cleared her throat. When Scott brought the stallion in, she continued, he was hypothermic, dehydrated, and covered in rope burns consistent with being dragged. Someone wanted him moved without being seen. At the witness table, Russell's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. And you're telling us, the ranking member interjected, leaning into his microphone. This wasn't just criminal neglect. It was part of a broader operation. Ramos hesitated, not from uncertainty, but from the weight of choosing which truth to speak first. Yes, she said at last. Victory's champion wasn't the only horse. We've traced 3 other abandoned animals with similar injuries, all linked to properties owned by shell companies tied to Mr. Russell. The gallery erupted, soft gasps, a chair scraping, journalists springing upright. Russell leaned forward sharply, microphone catching his breath. That is defamatory. It's evidence. The chair shot back, voice firm, tone unshakable. Scott swallowed hard, heart pounding so loudly he could hear it over the clamor. He remembered the stallion's trembling legs, the way the horse had pressed his head gently into Scott's chest, as though asking whether the world still held anything good. He expected the hearing to focus on the abuse. He hadn't expected it to expose a network. Then the chair raised a hand for silence. Mr. Jones, she said, turning toward him, we're calling you forward. Scott stood, legs unsteady, breath shallow. The aisle felt impossibly long. Reporters angled their cameras. Aides shifted binders. Senators straightened their jackets in instinctive preparation for impact. As Scott placed his hand on the Bible, he could feel Russell's stare drilling into him. The oath was short, but the moment he lifted his gaze to speak, the atmosphere changed. Quiet sharpened into anticipation. Mr. Jones, the chair began softly. Tell us what you saw that night. And Scott opened his mouth, the memory of the dying stallion rushing back with surgical clarity. Scott's voice wavered only on the first syllable. After that, the memory steadied him. It was just past midnight, he said, eyes fixed on the committee members. I was driving home along County Road 14 when I saw something in the ditch. At first I thought it was a tarp, but then it moved. A hush fell. Even Russell stopped shifting. Scott's throat tightened, but he continued. I pulled over. The horse was lying on his side, breathing in short, broken bursts, like every inhale hurt. His legs were wrapped in old shipping bandages, but they were soaked through with blood. Someone had tried to hide the injuries. Or hide him. He paused. The memory wasn't cinematic. It was raw, messy, cold. But the room absorbed every detail. He kept trying to stand, Scott said, but he couldn't. I'd never seen an animal fight that hard to live. Behind the panel, Dr. Ramos looked down, jaw clenched. She had seen the aftermath. An older senator leaned into his microphone. Mr. Jones, did you see anyone else on that road? Any vehicle following you? Scott hesitated. This was the part he'd buried, because saying it aloud made it real. Yes. A tremor of reaction rippled across the chamber. There was a truck, Scott continued. A black dually. It slowed when it saw me with the horse. The driver watched for maybe 10 seconds, then turned off his lights and backed into the tree line. Russell's lawyer stiffened. Russell's eyes narrowed, his posture rigid, not defensive, but calculating. And did you recognize the vehicle? The chair asked. Scott swallowed hard. He hadn't wanted this. He hadn't wanted to drag anyone into anything. But he had seen the decal across the back window, barely lit by his phone's flashlight. Yes, he said. It was a transport truck registered to one of Mr. Russell's companies. The gallery erupted. Gasps, shouts, the snapping frenzy of cameras capturing every muscle twitch on Russell's face. His lawyer leaned to whisper something urgent, but Russell didn't move. He stared at Scott with a coldness that felt rehearsed, weaponized. The chair struck her gavel. Order. Now. As silence fell again, she turned to Russell. Mr. Russell, do you wish to respond? This witness has placed your company vehicle at the scene of the abandonment. Russell leaned toward the microphone, face carved into a tight, polite smile. That young man is mistaken, he said quietly. Or misled. The room chilled. Scott felt something hollow open in his chest. Not fear, but recognition. Russell wasn't denying out of shock. He was denying like a man who had prepared for this moment long before it arrived. The chair's eyes darkened. Mr. Russell, she said, we have GPS records, veterinary documentation, and now eyewitness testimony. I suggest you choose your next words carefully. A long silence followed. Then, for the first time since the hearing began, Russell's composure cracked. Not fully, not explosively, but in a tremor at his jawline, a flicker in his eyes, a tightening of his grip around the microphone. And that subtle break, seen by millions watching live, shifted the entire equilibrium of the room. The committee smelled blood. The journalists sensed a story exploding into scandal. And Scott realized he was no longer just a witness. He was the hinge the truth now swung on.